So nearby Lucas, what are we talking about today?
A game that for some reason I'm playing at the moment.
For the third time. So nearby Lucas, I think privately we've discussed this game a lot. And
We have.
Final Fantasy 13 might be a game that I have seen more people give a undeserved second chance to. I can't think of a single game I've had more people that I personally know say that they've replayed to try and finish it multiple times. So for people maybe who don't know why Final Fantasy 13 has this reputation, we'll cover it in the wiki in a moment, but I just explain to them what the problems with this game are.
Oh God, give me an hour, Karl.
This is an hour-long episode.
So yeah, I've been just over the last month or so, I've been playing through just to try and eventually make some content out of it, and been keeping extortionate notes so I could go on and on, but just very, very linear, very, very slow, a lot of just really poor storytelling and world building.
This is a Final Fantasy game.
Yeah.
This is the same series that has Final Fantasy 7 in it, which ends with you fighting God.
I think half the Final Fantasies do, to be fair.
So remember when we played Final Fantasy 8 on my channel and it just completely fell apart in the third disc when we ended up in space playing cards?
Yeah.
And then we killed God by shooting a dog at them in the confines of all time and space.
Yeah, we did, yeah.
And it made no sense, but we still enjoyed the game. So that's the thing, how much less sense does it have to make for us not to enjoy the Final Fantasy games? I love Final Fantasy in general. Well, maybe for folks at home like myself who need a refresher on Final Fantasy 13, you can find links to the wiki we're referring to below. But without further ado, Final Fantasy 13 is a science fantasy role-playing video. Science fantasy.
I feel that's a good way to explain a lot of Final Fantasies, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like the official descriptor for Metroid, isn't it? Of exploratory action. You're like, oh, that's so good! Developed and published by Square Enix for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 consoles. Released in Japan on 2009. It's the 13th title in the mainline Final Fantasy series. I think we've got to pick that up from context, to be honest. Like many Final Fantasy games, Final Fantasy 13 includes elements from previous games in the series, such as summon monsters, chocobos, and airships. And Lucas, what's your favourite recurring element in a Final Fantasy game?
Oh, the chocobos.
The chocobos.
Yeah.
Hell fucking, I love chocobos.
I love them so much. And the chocobo music.
Oh yeah. Except when it's in Final Fantasy 13, it's that weird heavy metal remix.
I kinda like it a little bit.
Ride your chocobo. It's so bad. And Lucas, you say you're currently midway through playing this game, yes?
Yeah, so I've just got to the part where the game opens up and you start being able to do side quests and grinding and stuff, and about 30 hours in.
And you said you've been taking extensive notes.
Yeah.
So I'm now going to read just a brief synopsis of the game, and I want you to tell me what any of these words mean. The game takes place on the fictional floating world of Cocoon, whose government, the Sanctum, is ordering a purge of civilians who supposedly come into contact with the Pulse.
I'm out. I'm out!
The former soldier Lightning begins her fight against the government in order to save her sister, who has been branded as an unwilling servant to a godlike being, making her an enemy of the Cocoon. Lightning is joined by a band of allies, and together they overcome and also become marked by the same Pulse creature. They rally against the Sanctum while trying to discover their assigned task and whether they can avoid being turned into monsters or crystals at the completion.
It's just the most bizarre thing, because I was trying to remember, did I miss something when I was younger and played this? But the game just opens up talking about fal'cie, and cie'th, and as if you meant to know what they are.
That's the thing, this game is the most undeserved critical reanalysis I've ever seen.
Yeah.
With the exception of the prequel trilogy. Because people keep insisting that the game is good if you get to the 20-30 hour mark. And it's I've heard that so much, but every single time I ask people, well, do you like the first 20-30 hours? No. Is it good? No. The story's incomprehensible, the characters suck, but it does get good. Lucas, plot is the entire page. Oh, we're not covering that, so we go straight to reception?
Karl, I'm having to deal with the plot once. I'm not dealing with it for a second time.
It's a reception. Final Fantasy 13 sold over 1 million units on its first day of sale in Japan, and had 1.7 million copies sold for the PlayStation 3 in Japan by the end of 2009, and 1.9 million by the end of 2010. And Square Enix said that Final Fantasy 13 was the fastest selling title in the franchise history. Eat a dick, Final Fantasy 7.
To be fair, Nobody really knew when the game came out.
No, yeah, 'cause it looks beautiful. I will say, one thing I give the game, it looks fucking stunning. That's one of the reasons that I kept giving it a chance. I'm one of the idiots who gave it a chance multiple times.
I'm one of the idiots that just played it all the way through.
So, it says here that Final Fantasy XIII received generally positive reviews. Review aggregator Metacritic gave the PlayStation 3 version 83 out of 100 based on 83 reviews. And this is what I love about stuff like stuff that's like critically maligned now. It's generally accepted, oh, this thing sucks. I love going back and like, who didn't think that? Who was the person who's like, no, this is really good? And I bet now they've changed their mind, but they can't.
Can't change that review score though.
They can't, no. Not like Pitchfork. Have you heard they do that? Pitchfork music reviews?
They changed their movie review scores.
Oh no, Pitchfork, they review music.
Oh, music
albums
reviews.
that have since undergone critical reanalysis to say that they're good or bad. They changed their original review score, so they're not wrong.
So they don't even re-review.
No, they just changed the score.
Oh man.
So they're not on the wrong side of musical history. It was rated 39 out of 40 by Famitsu, one of the most prestigious video game publications in the world.
Yeah, it's one of those things of just, there's quite a lot of franchises where this happens, where a bad game in the franchise will occur, but because it has that name to it, people have this weird thing in their head where they're afraid to admit to themselves that it's not great.
Yeah. Look at Star Wars movies, stuff like that. Look at anything that's popular where there's a bad version of it, people just, they can't. So Dengeki praised the game for its battle system, saying that battles were by far the most exciting in the series, and concluded that Final Fantasy XIII deserved a score of 120, as 100 would not be enough. I bet that writer regrets that. The game was voted as the second best game of 2009 by the online readers poll. In January 2010, it was voted the best game ever in the Famitsu readers poll. Eat a dick, Final Fantasy VII, Super Metroid, Super Mario Bros. 3. You look back, it's like, today, it is like a solid 6 out of 10, if you're being kind. But you go back, no scoring system can even comprehend how good this game is.
Because I remember when I read it, a few reviews in magazines and stuff and on websites, I generally saw it scored like the 7 to 9 range. So good to great. I didn't know there were people out there saying it was
the best
beyond
game ever.
perfect.
It is the best game ever made, Lucas. The battle system received widespread praise, describing it as thrilling.
It's definitely not thrilling, it's interesting.
It's interesting until you realise, oh, it automatically does everything for you. I still prefer turn-based battle systems, because look at how hype we got in Final Fantasy VIII when Phoenix came in for the assist and we just Hulk Hogan'd it. So when me and Luke, we played through all of Final Fantasy VIII on my channel, and we got to the final Ultimacia battle, and we died. We got party wiped. But we got out a random GF, brought us back to life. But then it did it twice, and we didn't know, and it was so hype. Squall, please. Please. Done. Lost. Dead. Wait, what? It's activated again! Because it must be a new phase, new battle. Oh! New battle! Oh! Phoenix just like... Phoenix is like, eat a dick!
The absolute MVP. Also, Karl, it's not your channel, it's Fiend Gaming.
Oh yeah. Well, I own it. I own Fiend, whatever.
Oh yeah.
Lucas, linearity. While critics generally praised the attempt to revitalise the Final Fantasy series formula, many reacted negatively to the linear nature of the game, especially the first 10 chapters on Cocoon. GamePro described the gameplay as a long hallway towards an orange target that triggers a cutscene, a boss fight, or both. And I think that sums up the entirety of my experience with the game. Before I was like, fuck this, I'm going to go replay Final Fantasy X. And we have here Edge magazine, being fucking on point here. Edge and others awarded the game especially lower scores as a result of these aspects, with Edge in particular lowering the score they awarded the game to a 5 out of 10 due to the game's linear nature. In contrast, reviewers from Games Radar and Computer and Video Games appreciated the linear nature. It's a fucking RPG! The point is the freedom that it affords you to make your own decisions about how you approach every situation. I like not having to think. With Computer Video is describing it as a clever move to make it more linear, as it's kept the player from being bogged down with mundane number crunching and finicky and repetitive leveling up. You mean the entire draw and appeal of RPG games, watching the number go up?
Yeah, this person just doesn't like RPGs, do they?
But Lucas, how long have you spent in RPGs grinding just for one thing, or for a level or something like that?
Karl, I breed Pokemon.
Yeah, so do I. That's the thing, it's the draw of the genre, and they're like, oh, do you know that thing that makes the genre fun, and that some people just really, really like, because they like watching the number go up? That sucks.
Yeah.
Get rid of that. So, response to criticism. After the release, director Motomo Toriyama felt that the lower than expected review scores for a mainline Final Fantasy game came from reviewers who approached the game from a Western point of view. So, it just wasn't very good. Just accept, we made a bad game. These reviewers were used to games in which the player was given an open world to explore, he said. Do you mean like an RPG or a Final Fantasy game? He said, noting that this expectation contrasted with the vision the team has set out to create. He noted that it becomes very difficult to tell a compelling story when you're given that much freedom. You mean like in every other Final Fantasy game which tells a compelling story whilst also giving you access to the entire world map? Like, a trope in Final Fantasy games is that they give you the airship to travel the entire world. They give you literally the entire world map to explore. At some point in the story. Yoshinori Kitase stated that they didn't really intend to work within the RPG template, the template that Final Fantasy basically created and defined, but wanted to create a new game, even a new genre. He stated that in a lot of sense, Final Fantasy XIII is more like a first-person shooter than a role-playing game.
Why is it a Final Fantasy game then?
Also, why would you want to be compared to like Call of Duty if you're telling a story-driven game? Toriyama and Kitase later said in July 2011 that the biggest complaints about the game were that it was too linear and there was not enough interaction between the player and the world. Which they described as a lack of towns and minigames compared to previous Final Fantasy games. They also named the amount of time it took to access all the gameplay elements as a common criticism, so that people interpret it as a lengthy tutorial. So they acknowledged it, but didn't explain why. Yoshi Wada, the then president of Square Enix, made his thoughts about the section of the game known to Gamma Sutra. Some value it highly, and some are not very happy with it. He added, should Final Fantasy become a new type of game, or should Final Fantasy not become a new type of game? The customer have different opinions. It's very difficult to determine the way in which it should go. Well, if you invent and define a genre, I'd say stick with that.
I mean, true, but at the same time, whatever Final Fantasy 13 did, it got us to Final Fantasy 7 Remake in the end.
It did, eventually. It's like that little domino meme. Eventually, we got the fight against the big bomber. Why is that like just the best shit ever when like they just do the boss fights and then the song kicks in, you're like, this is the fucking best.
Oh god, the
This
music
is what Final Fantasy should have been the entire time. This is what it was like in my head as a kid.